Hello, thank you for buying the Scarecrow Cat Scarer. First thing to do is just to make sure that you've got everything that you should have. You should have a manufacturer's manual, instruction manual. Very important that as well as watching this CD that you read that manual through as well. You've got a sprinkler, you've got the sensor housing, you've got a stake, you've got a cap, and lastly a hose pipe connector. Next thing to do, if you take the sensor housing, just got the reset, just set that to 0, just turn the dial to 0. Then underneath you'll see you've got your battery housing, just take out the battery. You've got 2 connectors. Just push the battery on. Pop it back inside. And just put the battery cover back on again. Next, we just want to make sure that the sensor is working, so we do a dry test. For that, just put your sensor housing just nice and still on a table. Turn the reset knob at the back up to 4 or 5. And then what I'm going to do is wave my hand in front of it, and you should hear a click. We now know that's working. And then you heard a second click 3 seconds later where it's shutting itself off again. There's now about an 8-second wait for it to reset itself. And again, if I put my hand in front of it, simulating a cat walking in front of it, first click you'll hear is it switching on when it releases the water burst. 3 seconds later you'll hear a second click where it's switching itself off. And now it's switched itself. So we now know that the sensor is working accurately. If you hear no clicking, first thing to do, just as a possibility it's a dud battery, try a new battery. If that doesn't work, give us a phone call and we'll arrange to get a replacement out to you. Next, we need to take the sprinkler head and just simply screw it into the sensor housing. Don't over tighten, just so it's firm. That's fine. Then we screw the stake into the bottom. Again, don't need to over tighten that. Here you see the hose valve just above the bottom of the stake, the bit that goes into the ground. With this system, if you had a large area to protect, you could well have 2 or 3 Scarecrow water jets lined up next to each other. So with that, you'd run the hose straight through one end and it would carry on out and you connect them all up. But if you've just got the one unit, then simply put the cap on here just to block that off. Next, screw in your hose connector on the other side. Most people have a female hose connector like that that's connected to the end of the hose. If you haven't, we've enclosed one for you in the pack. Simply push, first of all put the rim, the bolt over the end. Next you just push your hose over the little round socket there and just turn it, screw that on and then tighten up the nut. I'll just hold it in place on the end of the hose. And then simply that just presses onto your connector on the bottom of the Scarecrow. And that just clicks on and that's on solidly. If you've not used one of these before, if you need to release it, you just pull back the yellow casing and that just pulls straight off again. Click that on. Next, once you've established the area that you want to protect, here we want to protect the lawn in front, we position the Scarecrow with the sensor facing the area that we want to protect. Then we simply place our foot on the bottom of the stake and using the sensor to guide, just push that into the ground. Very important that we don't press hard on the sensor and break that. Just rest your hands gently there, use your foot on the stake to push that onto the ground. Very important that you don't press down too hard on the sensor. If your ground is too hard for the spike to go into, then you'll have to phone us and order the CRO 200 Scarecrow Universal Mounting Bracket. That's just a little bracket that goes on the fence or on the wall to make it a wall-mounted system. The reset sensor button at the back here determines how sensitive your sensor is. What you don't want to do is to pick up animals that are more than 35 foot away. That's of no benefit whatsoever. So what you need to do is keep playing around with this sensor. 9 is the most sensitive and 1 is the least sensitive. The usual average is around about 5. But you can test it. If you start at about 40 or 50 foot away and have someone listen, then the click shouldn't come on as you walk backwards and forwards in front of it. You only want the click to come on when you get to around about the 30 foot, 35 foot away. Or even shorter if you've only got maybe a 20 foot area that you want to protect. Keep adjusting the sensor at the back until it only comes on when you first step into the zone that you want to protect. When testing the sensor, try not to walk in a straight line towards it because then it's at its least sensitive. It picks up most movement when something crosses in front of it, so you walk from side to side. I'm about to start walking in front of it, and you'll see if I walk sideways you'll hear the click come on and then switch off again. Just as a very rough guide, the manufacturer's instructions say that if you set it to between 2 or 4, it will protect an area up to 10 foot away, 5 to 7 up to an area 20 foot away, 7 to 9 area up to 30 foot away. As I said, you don't really want to ever to set it so that it detects things greater than 30 foot away. If you have got a very big area you want to protect, your best bet is to buy further additional units. Next, we just want to make sure that it's working. Connect up the hose, and then we can do a test with our hand in front of the sensor just to make sure that the water discharges correctly. As you can see there, it squirts for about 2 to 3 seconds and then switches itself off and resets after 8 seconds. Here you can see what looks like a little metal paper clip. And if I turn the swivel head, you can see that as it turns to the right, it comes across this little plastic stopper, and to the left comes across that little plastic stopper. That determines the spread, the fan, how wide it will spray. So here we've got it on a fairly narrow setting. Look, we can come in there, and it'll almost, at the moment now, it's got nowhere for the metal clip to move. It's just going to squirt straight ahead. Whereas if we actually want it to fan at a wider spread, we just simply move the plastic connectors wider. And now you can see that that has a much wider fan spread. Next, we'll move the clips, the directional clips, to a much wider setting, and now the water should sweep from side to side, offering the widest protection. Yeah, and I got wet that one, that was very wide. You probably wouldn't want it to sweep completely from side to side, or you're going to lose some of its effect. If you've got a very wide area that needs protecting, you're probably better off with 2 units. Right, I've now got my 3-year-old daughter who's going to test the Scarecrow. Alice, I want you to walk across over to the table and chairs over there. Walk over there slowly, that's it. Good girl, well done. Oh, it's got you again. If you look on the top, there's a little minimum and maximum dial. If you turn the dial towards minimum, it's going to shoot its minimum distance. It's just going to shoot a few foot in front. Whereas if you turn the dial up towards the maximum, is going to shoot its furthest distance. Again, results have shown that if you set it somewhere in between, you're going to get excellent results. Just some information there to finish up with. Troubleshooting. Again, there's a nice section on troubleshooting in the Scarecrow manual. Any problems, read through that. Also, the manufacturers, ScatMat, have got a website, www.scatmat.com. scatmat.com. It's in your manual. That's a great website. They've got an excellent section there that will help with any problems you've got. Also, if you've got any other problems, you can always give us a ring. If you've got any technical questions, you can give the manufacturers a ring. There is a lot of support going with this unit. Most of it can be found in the manual. A few words of caution there. The Scarecrow is conditioned to operate with standard normal hose pressure. If for any reason you're using a hose that needs to be operated lower than 30 psi or greater than 80 psi, it may not work effectively. But to be quite honest, most garden hoses, normal pressure from a house is going to be within that zone. Before disconnecting the unit, make sure you turn off the hose. Then of course you're still going to have some pressure built up in the hose, so just activate the unit to get rid of any last bit of water that's actually held within the hose. Now with the instruction manual, which is really written for the North American market, Canada and North America, where they get very severe frosts over the winter, it recommends that, whether over the winter where they get months with frozen ground, that you take the Scarecrow indoors. But still, some of that information does apply to the UK. If there is a weather forecast of severe frosts for a period of time, we do recommend that you empty the sprayer and take it indoors, because of course cats aren't going to dig up your flower beds when the ground is frozen anyway, so you won't need it out there. So if it is going to be frosty for a few days, take the Scarecrow indoors. It also says here that if you get the sensor, the white sensor at the front, dirty, that might reduce its effectiveness. Just keep that clean, with a damp cloth. And it says here, avoid pointing at moving water, windy areas or moving vehicles. That must be because of the movement. It could detect the movement of those and set it off incorrectly. Very small animals like squirrels, it may take, if a squirrel was coming into the area, it may take a bit of time with the squirrel running backwards and forwards before it sets it off. Finally, I'd just like to thank you for buying the Scarecrow. All the feedback we've had so far, that it's absolutely brilliant, works superbly. I hope you have as much fun with it as we have.